Alright, good morning, Will. You guys know where I live, so let's get started, okay? The end of the world has given us a harsh, merciless existence, where nature tries hard to push humankind to the very brink of extinction. Everything is against us, between us. Untold miles of lawlessness, apocalyptic roads wait for our feet, and the future, cold and dark, offers little comfort. Without change, there will be no peace, only survivors, and I am determined to be one of them. So, this morning is Chapter 7, The Hero, Safe Haven Refugee Camp. It takes place in Utah. Here we go, 1/1/2013. It's been almost 2 weeks since the war, and I still can't believe my luck. Joe, a senior Greenpeace member, showed up late and heard me trying to dig my way out. There were no other survivors of the secret meeting. Why was I spared? I deserve to be under that house. My dreams always start with me in the basement, not sure if I'll live. Maybe I'll find answers there. Adrian sighed. Taking a swig from his canteen, the first depressing weeks had been strange, full of hard days of back-breaking labor and eerie nights of broken dreams where he was in charge of a small group of survivors, fighting with everything he had to keep them alive and free. Instead of his fading concussion and the ribs healed, the images had gotten stronger and clearer. There were glimpses of a bright future and a horrible ground zero, and he had found himself thinking about it almost constantly. When he was awake, he quickly understood how to do it, how to set up the foundation for a new democracy, sensing even then that the people he'd gather would have nothing but their lives and the guilt of it, of knowing he might have prevented it all, would behold him after the 20-hour days began to wear him down. I was right, Adrian thought. He was well into one of those days. Now, the third this week. 1/4/2013. We hit Nellis today, and there's nothing left. More worrisome. I think maybe I'm sick. I'm seeing things Joe doesn't, hearing voices. I find odd colors in new places. Stare at people who glow like neon bulbs from dark and empty windows. There are words in the trees and movies in the gritty clouds, puddles with reflections. I may be having a breakdown. It's barely a scratch on what I deserve. 1/5/2013. It's getting worse. The people are discovering the awful pain-filled refugees still trying to find each other haunt me. They fall to their knees at my feet, beg me with tears and outstretched hands to help, to save them, and then I blink and realize they never even looked at us. What the hell is happening to me? A side effect of the experiments? Am I in a coma somewhere and this is all of my horrid nightmares? How I wish that were true. I'd gladly trade my life for America's. I share the blame for all the pain and death. I should have revealed who I was when there might have been a chance to stop it all. The need to atone is consuming, overwhelming, and I can't make enough progress each day to be satisfied. The worry is endless. 1/7/2013. The dreams are slowly convincing me I'm not crazy, demanding I take action. I remember each scene in such vivid detail when I awake. Even in the clear light of day, they feel right to me. I owe the whole world a debt, but to my country I owe everything that I am, even the one waiting for me in Arkansas. My mother was right all along. I have to try to save America. I've decided to start in the morning when we reach Las Vegas. That infamous skyline is dark now, but in the city that never sleeps there are people I know. I can feel them. Adrian crushed out his smoke thinking he'd been right. and wrong on that one. He found refugees who were grateful for his help, but he had also found Tanya, who killed Joe. Adrian flipped the page. Too bad he couldn't prove it. The topless dancer had immediately pounced on who she thought was in charge, while Adrian was just starting to realize the job belonged to him. By the time Tanya had understood, the good-hearted alcoholic firefighter was only interested in drinking, screwing, and forgetting she was openly sleeping in his bed and fetching his bottles. Adrian had wanted to kick her out for helping Joe become a drunk, but even one life lost on his watch was more than he could allow. So he had to throw himself into caring for his small, shell-shocked herd, hoping Joe would eventually recognize her for the scheming bitch that she was. They had set out for a base in Montana. Adrian's words of the secret bunker there, easy to believe. He was the shepherd now. That was why he'd been allowed to live. It was his duty to rebuild the world. 1/1/2013. Other than myself, there are only 30 people here so far. Most of them are elderly men, and I doubt half will survive. Their injuries are so bad that I can't help them in any way, other than providing drugs to dull the pain and a comforting hand to hold while they die. Each death kills something inside me. I wonder if I'd sacrificed family for these dead strangers. But I can't walk away. They need me too, and other than a little listening, I'll put it out of my thoughts and go on. I haven't abandoned him. I'm very late. 1/12/2013. We sleep in vans and buses. Not enough workers for tents yet, but I have an idea for who 2 common room setups. When the new man, Doug, recovers, that'll be his first chore. Doug's important to me. I just don't know how yet. I found him by accident, or maybe by fate leading me. He was trapped under a collapsed concrete bridge in the national forest near the Nevada state line. Small packs of coyotes were keeping him from escaping the crushed car and shallow water, and it's amazing he survived so long despite his huge size. Retired Army, he's one of my kind, but a little too old for what I need the most. Doug said a tremor took out the bridge while he was crossing it, and that made me decide to keep track of those things too. If the temperatures continue to drop, and this is wintertime, so they should, then we won't make it to Montana before we have a hole up somewhere. That thought keeps me awake at night, even when the guilt isn't burning into me. Where? 1/13/2013. Damn, I'm tired. These people are depending on me for everything, and I'm encouraging it, showing them I can handle the weight, but between standing guard at night on third shift, running rescue and supply runs during the day, and helping the camp setups and breakdowns, I'm beat. I have to get the help. The magic that my dreams hinted of last night, will fate send me what I need? 1/15/2013. Things are becoming so much clearer. My help is out there, but where? If we were all descended from the same bloodline, doesn't that mean they can hear my calls for help? We spent the last 2 days in a mall snowed in. The black flakes fell for almost 24 hours, and I left over 5 feet of nasty slush. I keep everyone inside until it was mostly melted. It felt wrong, as if we might be sickened by contact. And I do wonder if Mother Nature might be helping humankind's extinction along. It's a crazy thought, but in this new hell, anything is possible. We heard foreign voices on a military channel yesterday, and I moved the camp, ordered it. No one argued, and that makes it official for me. I'm the man in charge. 1/20, 2013. We heard foreign voices on a military channel yesterday, and I moved to camp. I ordered it. No one argued, and that makes it official for me. I'm the boss. I know they were scared. The voices were calling for everyone to surrender to the Mexican draft. But for me, it's real now. Attacking towns in New Mexico and Colorado, the stories are awful, and many of the people who are now survivors of two wars. The threat of the guerrillas is a serious one that will require a harsh plan and a lot of defensive work that these people will have to learn and help with. They've had an easy ride so far, but soon that will all change. The first mandatory meeting is coming up. Guess I'll find out then if I've done enough for them to get their support and cooperation. 1/25, 2013. They've agreed to all the things I wanted. We even have a name now, Safe Haven. We set up the two big tents along the center bonfire and a big metal pool, and we celebrated by barbecuing the chickens Doug found on a nearby farm. Tomorrow I'll show them the mess truck for a few of us quietly put together. It has it all, including a hot water heater. Since we have a cafeteria cook now, Hilda, we'll have a regular meal soon. We also have more heaters and supplies on the way. Kyle and Neil found an undamaged sports store. I'm damn glad to have those two men. They've been volunteered for the private and public police force I'm starting, and I've decided to just split them up so I can have them each lead their own team. Kyle started first, and I'm encouraged. Feel okay about sometimes leaving the camp in his hands on third shift. These men will be trained not as everyday guards or even Marines, but as soldiers in the Army. The Eagles will be no names that can separate them once I've finished. 1/26, 2013. My leadership is official, and I know some of them are waiting for me to become like the politicians of the past, but I won't use my authority unless I have to. I plan to keep giving them back some of what was stolen, and slowly things will come together. I envision a better time of it in the future and look forward to the help my dreams keep hinting of. 5 or 6 more like me will take us all to better places. Adrian paused again, this time to listen to the wind. Not sure if he rolled his eyes at the obvious shadow outside his flap. That would be Dale. He could tell by how the shadowy hips wore a tool belt without tools. The rookie was trying to pass his first level test and didn't know if he'd already failed. The police force was very new. This group of 9 men was only the second to try, and it wasn't promising, but they were moving fast out of the need. Adrian frowned. It was a necessity that had been driven home by Tanya. She and Joe had been a couple, but the drunken man who was considered his unofficial second in command had fallen further into hell the farther they'd traveled. To his credit, Joe had stubbornly ignored Tanya when she encouraged him to fight for the leadership, and she and everyone else saw Adrian earning. But it hadn't mattered. Too late by then, Adrian sighed. He was in charge, and Tanya hated it, mainly because Adrian wouldn't give her the time of day, let alone any power. She had turned a hero into a drunkard, slipped around on Joe in her quest for power, and tried to manipulate all of them, not understanding that loyalty had to be earned, not stolen. While Adrian had been busy with keeping them all alive, she had been plotting. Joe wasn't going to get her what she wanted, and instead of breaking it off with him and moving on, she convinced one of her lovers to stage a fight over her while Adrian was out of the camp on a supply run. Her motive? Adrian still wasn't sure. Had she really thought the camp would give Joe's place to her lover? Adrian's mind flashed to the death, and his grip on the notebooks tightened. Adrian knew by the unlit bonfire that something was wrong. How many have I lost? Adrian followed the loud male voice to the largest tent, detecting blood spatters and other signs of fight. When he stepped inside the dim canvas, his arrival was noticed instantly. There's the man, Caleb, a greasy blood-streaked biker growled. He waved his knife towards the corner where a reddish heap lay in the shadows. One down, one to go. Adrian's heart clenched in a sorrow for arriving too late to save the man who had saved him. Then the anger, the rage, was flooding every space of his being. His people, his once again terrified and cowering sheep, were all huddled in the rear of the tent, watching fearfully, not about to challenge the one killer, but clearly expecting him to. Fury as he'd never known filled Adrian. How dare someone try to steal his flock? He drew his 9mm before any of them knew it was coming. Bang! The biker fell to the floor. You have been found guilty, and I sentence you to death. Adrian roared over Caleb's moans. He grabbed the murderer by his jacket and brutally dragged him out of the tent, leaving a wide, bloody smear in the dirt and the grass. He roughly handcuffed the screaming man to the door of Joe's lime green convertible and stormed to a nearby supply truck, tossing the keys into the dirt out of the killer's reach. You can set him free when he's dead, Adrian snapped as he stepped into the truck. His mind raced furiously. Knowing Tanya had done this, Caleb was one of her lovers. He'd witnessed them himself. She would pay. Minutes later, Adrian stepped out of his tent with Joe's stiffening body over his shoulder and a shovel and a bottle of Jack Daniels in the other hand. His people had stayed with him as he dug the grave and got drunk, waiting with faces that begged him to say he'd forgave them for not stopping it. Point man, when it happened, Neil had been most ashamed. No one had wanted to get involved, and Adrian's voice was hard as he finished sinking the cross into the thick, ugly dirt. I'm getting tired, and there are survivors out there who still care to try again. If you guys can't get it together enough to at least do what's right, then I'll find another group to help, and you'll be on your own again. Adrian shut the notebook, and thinking the panic on their faces had been enough to tell him he had their support, their loyalty, except for Tanya. Never one to follow blindly, her twisted logic had become clear when she'd arrived at Joe's tent, where Adrian was getting drunk. She had begged him not to be banished, and he let her stay because of one simple sentence. If I had known Caleb was nuts, I would have told someone. That had stopped him. He, too, had missed it, had let in a remorseless killer. Because of Tanya's lust for power, 2 men were dead, and he couldn't even punish her publicly due to his own strict rules concerning the treatment of women. Therefore, Adrian had devised his own little line of justice, and tonight would be the climax. After weeks of subtle flirting and making promises with his eyes, he was going to let her seduce him, the savior and the whore. The rest of the camp, having no idea of the game being played, had already begun to regard her as a slightly crazy when she spoke of the relationship. Her frustration, and when he wouldn't confirm her claims, was pleasing. Tanya had been hiding ambitions of running this camp and having real authority. The power she had longed for with Joe was nothing compared to a position as Adrian's mate. In this war-torn land, she would be a queen, not a dumb chippy who's been selling her body to get what she wanted to be. Adrian knew the way her mind worked. She was sure that all she had to do was get him in bed. Every man who had ever slept with her had probably become her puppet, from teachers to bosses. He was to be her crowning. Scratch, scratch. Adrian grinned, setting the notebook aside. Revenge was the best served cold, and he'd waited for that reason. He could have had her the same day as Joe's murder if he wanted. She was that callous. Come in. Tanya ducked carefully reading him, his mood. When he smiled and leaned over to blow out the candle, she started pushing off her boots, barely lit by the shadows of the center fire. She didn't witness his smile merge into a greedy leer of lust and hatred. He was just as callous. She was about to learn that. Tanya was in ecstasy already. Half an hour from now she would be Adrian's legal mate. She went to him eagerly and in the darkness determined to make sure he enjoyed himself. When he met her, hands jerking her close, she melted against him. Oh, I wanted you so badly, Tanya moaned, pressing closer to his hard male body in the dark tent as the cold Utah wind beat against the camouflage vinyl. Her light southern accent was fake but sexy, and Adrian's body throbbed with need. Tanya groaned in delight as his mouth slanted over hers, his hands roughly roaming her soft body, discovering that she wore no panties to slow him down. He grabbed a handful of thick red curls and ground his hardness against her belly, thinking her pale skin and her green eyes combined with that Irish hair easily made her the sexiest woman here. Adrian pushed the camp whore down by her shoulder, pulling at her dress as she slid to her knees. Her fingers went obediently to the buckle of his jeans. Her hands were like silk, and when her hot mouth closed over him, he arched forward, the sucking sensation incredible. Her head began an aggressive up and down movement that sent heat rolling into his toes, and then he pushed her back, followed her down onto the cold canvas floor. Shoving forward before she was settled, he kissed her deeply, loving it that her gasps were not faked, like some women that he'd been with. He moved inside her, shallow at first, quick and light, and she climaxed fast. Nails raking lightly down his shoulder, body tightening, pulsing, and exploding, Adrian thrust harder, dog-tag clinking against the chain. Tanya let her hands roam his hard, tanned skin and soft blonde spikes. We'll be good together. I'll be a good mate to you, she promised, moaning as he started long, hard strokes that slid her up and on the floor and drew a surprising rush of wetness. Very few men could pull two from her. Adrian tangled his rough hands in her thick red curls and pushed in as deep as he could get. On fire as he observed the triumph and need melt together in her glowing green orbs. Finally mine, she growled, giving him a chill, and she pulled him down to kiss his full, sexy mouth. Coming up for air, Adrian smiled cruelly, leaning his weight into each rubbing thrust. Oh no, baby, this is one-time deal. Enjoy it. His breathing was harsh, and he swelled, almost snapping when she understood, but her body refused to listen. Slender hips keeping perfect rhythm as he rutted between her long legs. Bastard! On the edge, Tanya pulled him down from another hot kiss that showed her into a world of rivers and light, but she began to struggle almost immediately, and he let her go. The pain in her expression was bigger turned on than her mouth. Adrian grounded their lips together, kissing her, touching her, mocking her as he thrust roughly. Used to being the one who was cold and in control, Tanya was horrified to feel her traitorous body responding again, wanting his touch no matter the intent. She twisted, almost rolling them over. Adrian dropped his full weight on her, making her cry out. Be still, he growled harshly, hips now pounding into her. You begged for it enough. Her fists slammed into his shoulders as he lowered his head to avoid telling marks on his face. enjoy the fight she couldn't win. When her nails raked down his spine, drawing blood this time, he shoved forward, grunting. A final and he was on his knees in a quick movement, squirting on her thigh as she scrambled to get away. Adrian was up a second after her, very aware that this was the moment she might be her most dangerous. He bent over to pull up his jeans and unable to keep from grinning in satisfaction. A thick medical book sailed over him, slapped the side of the tent, and slid down the canvas wall in front of him. He laughed, fishing in his pockets for a smoke. Tanya had jerked her dress over wild curls and was pulling on a calf-high black boot, tears of rage blurring in her vision. "You'll pay for this, I'll tell." Her fake accent was gone, and she snarled when his confident smile remained in place, full of remorseful pleasure. "You're a whore. They already know that. Even you can't get away with rape." She sputtered clumsily, pulling on her other boot. Adrian shrugged, studying her carefully. "Don't know of any rape conviction where the woman got 2 orgasms before she started complaining. If they knew what kind of man you honestly are, they wouldn't follow you anywhere." Tanya stomped from the tent with sticky thighs, and Adrian's mocking voice followed her out into the cold, windy air. "But they don't know, Red, and from you they'd never believe." Adrian returned to his notebook with a smirking expression that few in camp would have recognized. There might have been a skirmish or two left, but the war between him and Tanya was over. She was an outcast, the camp treating her the same way he did. And tomorrow, when she claimed they were sleeping together, he would not deny such a nasty lie. It would drive her crazy that this time she was telling the truth and no one would believe her. Adrian's smile faded. His leadership hadn't been questioned once after Joe's death, but later, when Neil had told him his quick, brutal execution of the killer had gotten him the camp's final approval, Adrian had been required to stop himself from telling the Arizona state trooper how morally wrong it was to earn respect by taking a life. It was a hard new world, and they were all adjusting as best they could. "Sure, would be easier with a few more of the good men from my dreams," Adrian thought, pulling on his boots. Just a few. He had a couple of go-to guys who showed promise, but frankly, he needed a lot more than those here could give. Just after midnight now, it had been 7 weeks since the war, and they were spending 4 days in a heavily wooded Fish Lake National Forest. Camped below Milford, Utah, Safe Haven was waiting for a small group of men to get back from a supply run to a nearby food warehouse. The storms had slowed them down. As always, Adrian's relentless mind was on where to call home for the winter. They'd already checked a long list of places. When they broke camp in the morning, they would continue north toward the base in Montana. But he already knew what they'd find there. Nothing. His followers were searching for the authority. Adrian was directing them to the bunker under the compound. But if he kept picking up survivors regularly, there was no way that the small shelter would hold all of them. They would figure out before he got them there that they'd find nothing. The choice of their destination had been left entirely up to him, the camp indicating at the meeting that they had faith in his decisions. Though that had been the plan all along, it was still a large burden. "It's like sheep," he muttered. He knew they were scared and lost, but Adrian was unable to imagine a situation where he would give over control of his own life so easily. They had no problem with being told where to sit and stand, and while it made things a lot easier, it showed him how weak they were and how much had to be done. He would push harder and do more for them. They didn't even have a doctor yet, and That they needed desperately, especially him, now that he'd been with Tanya. The sated blonde grinned at the delicious memory. It was wrong, bad, and damn. He enjoyed it. Revenge had been better than cold. It had been fiery. All right, you guys, that's the end of the first part of the chapter 7. And we've gone way far past what I had anticipated. So I'm just going to stop it right there. I'm going to bookmark this page. And I will start on section 2 of chapter 7. It's a good thing, but it's a long section. I'm sitting here looking at it. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 pages long, so I'm thinking that we're going to have to stop right there. Let's see. 2 right there. Okay, we're on the bookmark page. Hope you guys are enjoying the story. It's starting to really open up. You're starting to see that after the nuclear war that we had got into, that a group of people were trying to make their way to Montana. So, you could just imagine if we had been into a war, that things like this could really happen. It could happen right here on home turf, So this is the reason I do this, is so that you people that are not getting prepared yet, maybe it's time you did, It's just, you never know when a missile's going to fly in. We have China and Russia and Syria to worry about, so his book's getting good. I'll see you guys on the next one. As you guys know, can't do any of it without you. God bless you. God bless me. God bless USA. Till next time, guys. Thanks.